Hello, welcome to the Creative Studio version 6 demo. It is Gammill's pleasure to bring you many exciting new features. I'm Matt Sherman, author of Creative Studio. Recorded patterns now show on the screen. Patterns being recorded are shown dynamically on the CAD screen. It's possible to record patterns with the head and looking at the screen instead of the quilt. So I'm going to start regulated, and then you can do this with sewing on or off, and then I'm going to go ahead and record, and I'm recording a pattern around this flower. Okay, and then I'm done. I just hit stop. There it is. Shows dynamically while you're recording it, saves it CSQ in case you want to use it later. Concatenation and point-to-point pattern has been a very requested feature. To use, hold the control key and then mouse click however many patterns you want to concatenate. You can do it with from the head with this icon here with the point-to-point pattern, or you can draw it on the CAD screen by clicking Alt-P or clicking the point-to-point pattern on CAD. I've got grid point snap on here. Okay, see how each one of those is a different size? And that was because the first pattern that we selected was this one, and freeze aspect was on. So the aspect has been maintained. So as you get wider, it has to get taller and shorter. On this pattern, freeze aspect is off and the height is 2 inches. So we'll pick that one first, and then it doesn't really matter what the other ones are set to. And then I'm going to click Alt-P. And I'll try to click on the same spacing as the last time, although the order of the patterns is different this time. But as you can see, they're each coming in at 2 inches tall. With our new Apply Pattern feature, you can make a point-to-point follow any other pattern. To use, just pick your point-to-point pattern, set the desired height, then right-click the pattern you want to apply the point-to-point to, click the Apply Pattern. It has this little paintbrush, and there very quickly you have the point-to-point pattern applied to that pattern. If you don't set the height properly, you'll get some odd results. Here I've got patterns selected with a larger height, and then I'm going to click Apply Pattern. Here, I'll put one up that's even bigger. Control Z undoes it in case you want to change the height. Oh, there we go. That's too big. So just Control Z, go in, set the height to something a little more reasonable for the application, and then hit Apply Pattern. You can use this in conjunction with the new point-to-point concatenation. So here I've got a flower picked, and then I'll pick the diamond, apply pattern to the middle circle here. Perfect circular arrays, as you can see there. So it sews continuously, knot to knot. If you change the aspect ratio of the pattern, you can create some interesting effects. In the past, on pattern to boundary, we had standard, which will place a pattern basically just square. And then a few years ago we added stretch. Stretches the pattern. And now we've added poly, which will stretch a pattern into any shaped boundary. Create some interesting effects, not always desirable. Not all patterns are able to be used with poly really well. This meander works well in most cases, but typically something like this square spiral does not work that well. Certain boundary shapes and certain pattern selections are more conducive toward the new poly feature. So here I've set the baseline on an angle, which would place this meander pattern on this angle. But whenever you use the poly, it still fills the square but creates a totally different looking meander. We now have power assist in all modes, including the hand-guided modes. It'll stay active while you're recording or while you're sewing. We can now, under File, Import Images, you can pick your pattern. You can see the grid on it. I'll go ahead and turn it off so you can see it go off. You can zoom in, zoom out. You can put a pattern on the top of it. Try it out, see what it looks like. Kind of hard to see, isn't it? If you right click in the Open CAD, there's a new image attributes. And in there you can change the line thickness of the pattern, which sure helps. You can also decrease the visible image, or you can change the filters. This takes the green out, takes the blue out. It can be helpful for designing patterns, helps the stitching come out more. If you save this project, you'll save it with the image. You'll note whenever you add a new image, it'll create a new design group. Image attributes will work on quilt groups that don't have an image loaded. Obviously the color filters have no effect, and the image opacity has no effect, but line thickness does have an effect. This has been something that people have requested to help them be able to see their patterns better. It will increase the thickness of the boundary and the patterns, but it will not affect the thickness of the trim, because we want to know exactly where the edge of that trim is going. Once you have the patterns laid out the way you want them, you can then export that by going File, Export Image. What you want to save it as. When you've exported your image, it's on your computer, in your C drive, in your Statler Stitcher folder, is Images folder. There's what we just exported. Take that and put it on a stick, load it into your email program, or just save it. You can make images as you quilt along of the work you've done, and you can provide them as a service to your customer. A couple of different varieties of things you can do. And of course you can export quilt groups that have no image. And a quick way to see what you've exported is just to import it back in. And this is not patterns, this is an image. The ultimate purpose of import image is to be able to aid with pattern design. Increase the line thickness. I'm just trying to get through this real quick, but I think you get the idea. Combine that, and then once you had it all done, you could export it. It's a very handy pattern designing tool. A real handy pattern design tool, and one that'll help you a lot with some of the new features of Creative Studio, is our new nodes mode, which has taken the place of our divide function. It will do everything that divide will do plus a lot more. So you just click nodes, and right here the pattern is a little bit off, so I'm going to grab this pink handle. Pink handle is kind of like an endpoint. The blue handles are like arc points. And then I can kind of fix that to match closer to the other corners. And maybe right here I don't like the way that's kind of jutting out a little bit. Same thing here. We'll fix it up a little bit. But basically the patterns are completely plastic with this change. You can start nodes button here, which is 2 circles with green center, or with a right click, then pressing nodes, or by pressing F7 on the keyboard. And as I showed you earlier, you can manipulate things. Now whenever you're over a pink node, you can click D for divide, and you can see what you can do with there. If you're over a blue node and you click D for divide, it just beeps at you, nothing happens. You can only divide at arc endpoints. If you're over a pink node and you right click, a new menu comes up and you can press divide. On our teddy bear with frame pattern, you'll notice a little red dot by the corner of his foot. If you go into nodes mode, I'm clicking F7, right click that spot, you'll see a command, pause, please change thread color. So whenever you're quilting, whenever it gets to that spot, it will stop sewing and it'll ask you to please change thread color. This in the past was something that could only be done in AutoSketch. Now, if I right click any pink node and I type pause, all capitals, I can type any type of message that I want, press enter, I can get out of nodes mode, and then there you'll see that there has been a designer pause added to this point. So if I quilt this, my crosshairs right there. Okay, I'm going to quilt this. Press quilt. Gets to the top of his foot, and it says stop for some reason. You can do a single stitch there. You can change color of thread there if you wanted. If you were doing like a large edge to edge and there was a applique in the way, and you could sew for about 20 minutes, and then you needed to be there to keep it from getting bound up, you could put a pause mark there, and then you could safely go and run your rest of your business without worry of that getting caught up, and then it would stop and just be sitting there waiting for you to come back. Again, it's very important that you type pause with all capital letters. You can add a note without the pause if you wanted to. You'll get the red sign, but you won't get a stop there. You can also change stitches per inch. This pattern is sewing at 12, so I'm going to make it change to 16 here. And you can also type speed, and it'll change by percentage. So if I wanted to sew at half of whatever it's at, so it's starting at 65, now it'll change to 50% of that, which is about 32. So there's a lot of possibilities what you can do with these designer nodes. If you use a lot of them, it can maybe get a little confusing because each one of them has a red dot. But if you wanted to know what it was, you could go into nodes mode and then go into each one of these, right click them, and you could go back and you could review what each one of them was. Okay, I'm going to start this quilting so we can see what it's going to do. Okay, I think the first one was speed. And there you can see the speed dropped to 32 down in the corner. There's the stop for some reason. Still sewing at 32. Now the stitches per inch has changed to 16. And it's up in here, and it didn't stop here because that was just a note. Hey Christina, what's that bear's name?
Cubby.
Part of the improvements to the nodes is that we can now export them to a CSQ. And if I make a new quilt group, and bring this pattern in, you can see that all the nodes have transferred over. The nodes also dynamically size with the pattern. The one thing nodes won't do, and this has always been true, is if you go into the nodes mode and you go over a node and press D to divide, it'll say pattern contains designer pause. Dividing removes the designer pause data. Proceed. And that will remove all these red dots. If you say yes, it'll remove it. Border corner has been improved. This is the new border corner icon. I'm going to go click the corners now. Okay, that's what you're used to seeing in previous versions of Creative Studio, and then you'd figure out how to place the pieces. Now if you press Control and select the border piece, you want to pick the corner first and then the border. and then hit pattern to boundary, or just do your border corner setup. You can pick these patterns beforehand. It'll fill in the top, and if you give it a length, it'll fill down the side. The margin applies. The orientation of the corner is the same. This is upper left. Designed as an upper left corner. L-shaped corner. Different types of type. But the new part is the quilt length and the fact that you can control select two patterns. You want to pick the corner first and then the border piece. If I look at this, I'll see that it's 1.24 wide by 1.29 tall. If we look at this side piece, it should be different. Width would become the height, so the height would be 1.24, but it's not, it's 1.26. And the reason is because it's slightly modified the size of those to work out to be exactly 30 inches. So it subtracts out the margin, the size of this corner, figures out how many pieces will fit. So we recommend you sew this top, and then be aware that you may have some shrinkage issues over here, so you need to be aware that you may need to stop and adjust this sizing a little bit. Sew this top and then use this size of pattern to place your repeats down the side to chunk, and then stop when you have one more side section to do. Skip that, do the bottom, and then figure out those repeats to fit. I set this up again to show you how you can change this connect. It says, if true, the corner and border will connect. Right now it's true. If I put it to false, the patterns will come apart slightly. Main place where you'd use that is patterns that are not designed to connect. So I'll use the oval as the corner and the square as side pieces. Probably would want to change that to square. And you can see that it's automatically changing connect to false because it knows it can't connect. Maybe it'd look better if we switch those. Something like that. Mirror is a feature that's often used by designers. If you right click the pattern, you'll see mirror, or it's right over here. So I'm going to click mirror. You can do it with grid snap on or off. Ask for a first point on the CAD, then a second. Click that, and that's going to be your mirror point. F2 that, and you'll see it jump, which means you'd have to reorder that. This one wouldn't be that hard to reorder, but I'll go ahead and show you a new feature called order join. And now, when I F2 it, the patterns have been, their direction has been changed and their order has been changed in order to make it so continuous. Okay, here's some more example of the order join function. I'm going to let you watch this virtual stitch out. And you can see that the order isn't correct. I think you get the idea. So you just pick the pattern that you want to start. You can right click and pick order join. It'll straighten it out. Selects them all after it straightens them out. Here, I'll point that out a little clearer on this one. You can also pick this gray square here for order join and see it's picked them all. So if you wanted to combine them or delete them or toggle them as sewn, it'd be easy to that way, but they're still individual patterns. So here I'll order join this set. And note that whichever one you last do is the first one that's going to sew. So I did this one and then this one and then this one. And it can only do it if the patterns are actually touching or within a stitch length of each other, which is the requirement for not doing a tie off. So here it's going to tie and jump down to here. So that's why they had to do it as separate order join operations. Here's another quick example where I've mixed the pieces all up. You know, this is things beeping and jumping stitches all over the place. All you do is pick the first piece and say order join. I could combine group if I wanted to. Probably would want to on this one. Hit F2. And now everything is back in the proper order. No jumps, no beeps. Here's an example I mocked up to show when there's a gap. I'll measure these gaps. So the length of 0.17, 0.21, and our stitches per inch are 12, which is 0.087. So these won't connect. So if I pick this first pattern and say order join, it only goes to there. Same thing on this one. Order join, it stops at this. But if I take and move this closer, there's still a gap. I'll measure it to make sure it's within a stitch length. It is 0.05, 0.087 is about our stitch length. And order join. You can see that it knows that it won't have to tie off here, so it's went ahead and connected those. Here there's a big gap obviously, and so it didn't order join those. I'm going to combine them. Again, normally you don't have gaps, but it's not uncommon when you're designing things to have slight gaps. It'll go ahead and straighten those out for you. Fixed false thread break issues to where it won't detect a thread break in the tie on or off. And also, if you still were having problems with thread break, set a thread break delay, and that's in seconds. The default is 0, but you can go up 9 seconds. Cause a thread break to be ignored slightly longer period of time, or right on the edge of being a true versus false thread break that would give it enough time for the thread to move the thread break wheel for the system to be able to determine that it was a false thread break. With our fill function, have always had a slight rounding as the pattern came into the boundary. That was more noticeable in version 5. With this version, we've made it to where there's no rounding. Also, the slight shortness of the start and stop has been fixed, and I'll show you that here. Result of these fixes is it does take longer to do the fill, so please be patient. But if you zoom in real tight, you can see that the start goes right to the boundary point, and then there's no angular. The icons have been freshened up and changed a little. This is the pattern cycle icon. The trim pin was red. It made more sense for it to be tan color. Boundaries blue because an unselected boundary is blue, and a trim is tan. The right icons have changed position a little bit. This is rotate, flip, horizontal, vertical. This is the new mirror function. This is the rubber stamp, circular array, echoes now on this list. Apply pattern is a new feature. The nodes mode is a new feature. Reverse start and end. Order join is new. Our converts. Fill inside. Fill outside. And the toggle pattern as sewn, unsewn, and then delete. We think you're really going to like the new pattern designing tools we've given you inside Creative Studio. Happy quilting!